Hello puny humans, welcome to this video. This one's going to be all about amp settings. I've been getting a lot of questions lately about what settings to put my amp on to sound like this, or what settings do you use to make it sound like that, or what do I use. So in this video I am going to divulge it to you. Now I always record all of my audio for my videos into my PC. It's just a hell of a lot easier than recording into a microphone, and I don't have an amp constantly set up all the time to be recording, and I don't have a decent microphone to record an amp should I want to. So I just plug straight into my computer and I can do a lot more and get a lot better sounds than I would otherwise. So I record into a Line 6 UX2, which I bought off my friend a few years ago. He'd had it for a few years as well before that, so it's quite old, and the software that comes with it, Gearbox, which you can download for it, is also quite old. As you can tell by the interface, it looks kind of old-fashioned, and you can't even adjust the size of it. See, I can't drag it at all because it's that freaking old-fashioned. But it does the job. I get some good sounds out of it, and it sounds sweet. So that's what's important at the moment for me. I'm sure there may be better ones out there. There may be some better interfaces out there you can do more with. But like I say, for now, this does the job, and I get some sweet tones. So beginning with this one, quite high gain is important. Gain or drive, whatever it may be called on your amp. Crank up that, because that's going to give you the thickness of your distortion, which is always, of course, very important. Bass, I normally have around the middle, sort of 12 o'clock. When I say 12 o'clock, I'm referring to like the clock, so like 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, you get the idea. So this is around 1 at the moment, which is fine. I have quite high mids. I always have my mids cranked quite high. This is something I stole from Ben Weinman of Dillinger Escape Plan, who says he plays with quite high mids. I thought I've never tried that before. I normally have my mids like, you know, about the mids, still about there, about the middle. So I thought, okay, I'm going to crank my mids and see how that sounds. You know what? I loved it. So I kept that. I always use high mids. Treble is around 9 o'clock. That's not 9 o'clock, that's 3 o'clock. The 8 confused me. So around 3 o'clock. Presence. If you have presence on your amp, it's kind of like an extra treble almost. Too much of it can be a bit too overbearing, so presence, think of it as a kind of an extra treble, and then obviously you know what volume does, unless you're a muppet. So then we have pedals as well. These can affect the tone. I'm not sure if they do on software, but I normally don't have much on, just a bit of reverb. Occasionally, if it's quite a fiddly part, I'll put some compressor on. Don't really use mods. Delay, if it's a nice solo-y sort of single note part. And then a noise gate, because that can just take some of the hum off of the guitar, which always can be a bit of a problem. And this is one of the biggest things that you'll find if you crank an amp, like an actual amp. If you crank the gain up, you'll start to get a lot of feedback. And again, depending on your guitar, is going to depend on how much feedback you get. And if you get too much feedback, it's just going to sound horrible. So you might need to invest in a noise gate of some kind to make it not sound dreadful and have the zzz in the background the whole time, because no one likes that. So I'd say if you have a decent computer and you want a lot of options and a lot of stuff to play with, try and get something like this that you can plug into your computer and just go with that. Line 6 UX2 that I use, really good. Like I say, quite old, so they might be quite cheap now. I'm not sure, you'd have to have a look. But you get some good software with it, which is what you need. And you can do a lot with this, even with this program. Like I say, it's quite old. There might be some better ones out there. I don't know. I haven't really looked. But for now, this does the job for me. But I do highly recommend them. So this is going to sound a little bit whack because it's going through the camera microphone, so excuse the horrible tone that it will probably get through the microphone, but I thought I'd show you. It's pretty much the same setup as I just showed you on the Gearbox software as I have on my amp for this sort of thing. So my bass is about 12 o'clock, my middle's all the way up, my treble's about 3 o'clock, and I also have a bunch of other things. I have ISF, on this amp, which makes it kind of sound either really American or really British, but most amps don't really have that, so ignore that. I also have resonance, which is like an extra bass in the same way that presence is an extra treble. But other than that, everything else is pretty much the same, just gain, volume, bass, middle, treble. Simple. Okay, I'm using one of my overdrive distortion channels. And as you can hear, I have a lovely hum because I don't have any pedals plugged in. So there's a lot of feedback going on. Need a noise gate really. I have one, just I didn't set any pedals up. So this is just straight from the amp, and I'm sat right next to the amp, which probably isn't helping. Now the thing is, when you come to set up your own amp, it's going to be completely different for you what it is for me, because there's so many variables that come into play. So if you're using a head and cab, the type of head and the type of cab are going to make a difference. If you're using a combo, that combo is going to sound, it's going to have its own sound. Then there's your guitar, what guitar you have, what the wood is, what the pickups are. So many different variables. If you have pedals plugged in, what pedals they are, what order they're in can change the tone. So like I say, millions of variables, so getting the same tone for everyone isn't really a possible thing. You just have to mess around with it and experiment and try to find a tone that you like and that's closest to what you can get. Now if you've got a cheaper amp that doesn't have a very good distortion or overdrive on it, like some of the cheap amps just sound very tinny if they have an overdrive, so I'd recommend just getting a pedal, just something simple like a Boss MD2 Mega Distortion. It's a pretty good little pedal, quite cheap, good for an entry-level pedal to get into the distortion world, and it will help you sound more like a post-hardcore metal sort of sound than your crappy tinny distortion will probably give you. So as I said, I'm pretty much setting up the same way as I did on the software. Bass is about 12, middle all the way up, treble about 3, and then don't worry about that. And my presence, not that you can see it, is at about 3 o'clock, and then my gain is also at about 3 or 4 o'clock. And that's going to give me pretty much the similar tone to what I had on the Gearbox software. We could mix it up and go for a bit more of a rhythmic sound, so we could add more bass. I'm going to go about 3 o'clock bass, middle, bring it down to 12, treble, bring that down to about 1. And that should be more kind of better for rhythm than lead. It's a bit thicker and a bit beefier. You could try roll off the bass a lot, bringing the bass back to about 10 o'clock, bring the middle up to about 2, and then we'll go high treble. We'll see how that sounds. So that's maybe a little bit more punk than anything. So experiment with different ways to set it up. There's really no right or wrong answer. Like I say, it's just a case of trying it out and seeing what works with your amp, with your setup, with your, this is really weird to do from a distance, with your stuff, because that's what makes the difference. And focus, focus, focus. So there you go. I hope you found this useful. If you have any questions for me, slap them in the comments and I'll see what I can do. So that should help you try and make your amp sound a little bit more like some sort of post-hardcore icon. Thanks for watching.